Hey, Dave.
Hey, Lee, how are you?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Our first episode of the Humanity podcast.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So what we're going to be chatting about through this podcast series?
Apparently, the world is not in a good state.
Yes.
And I think that there is a lot of doom and gloom and fear-mongering, rightly so to some degree, but that I don't think is going to make a massive change to people's behaviours. And what if actually we could talk about climate action and climate change and whatever label we want to give it in more of a positive things people are doing to improve the fate of our planet. And actually, if we discuss these things, maybe that will further inspire more people to go, actually, it's not just a given, it's not out of our control, people are doing some interesting stuff, and maybe therefore I can do some interesting stuff as well.
But I think there's also if you look at the whole topic of climate change, there's data, so much data about it. Like every day there's another article about targets missed or, ice sheets melting. But actually, when you kind of look at it, it's really difficult to decipher as a sort of normal everyday person what that actually means, and I'm kind of really interested in, things like advances in AI, how that can kind of help us to turn that sort of data into stories as well. Because, I think most people are phenomenally bad at looking at kind of spreadsheets and graphs and drawing conclusions. So, I think it's really interesting how, like, there is so much out there which I think could be articulated better.
Are you suggesting that the 150-page report from the World Economic Forum is not everyone's bedtime reading?
I'm afraid so. I just about made it through the executive summary, to be honest with you, which was like 4 pages long. So,
I agree. I think the better storytelling is a given, and also just realizing that everything kind of has a bias to it as well. Like there's always going to be some context to where that story arc's coming from. But this is where it's interesting with like the stuff you're doing on your citizen science side of things with Thames River and stuff in Henley, and also the people that's connected you to obviously around the world who are doing similar things to protect waterways and seeing it kind of on the ground. But also from me and my family traveled for a year and a half around the world, and we saw what happens when tourists aren't in places. And, the beaches upon beaches of plastic waste everywhere, like it's there. It just gets tidied away and hidden from you if you're kind of on holiday. But if you're not on holiday, then it's, and there's nobody there to clean it up, then you see it for what it actually is. And I think, that is easy to say it's not my problem, say it's not going to happen, but actually from embarking on that, you start to find companies doing interesting stuff like taking all them plastics off the beaches and turn them into, trainers or into some kind of biofuel or something along them lines.
So I definitely think there's that. I mean, it's, again, you talk about my citizen science. I think, one of the things I've realized is actually if you kind of get involved in this, it can be very empowering. But equally, you then want to know, like, in terms of the work you're doing, how does that fill in or go into a kind of broader narrative? How does that make change at a kind of high level? And I think, it's interesting you talk about plastics on beaches. I mean, I was lucky enough growing up to live in Fiji. So many, many years ago, but I lived in Fiji before there was a prevalence of plastic. And I can remember just going and swimming in pristine seas. And I don't think you can go and swim anywhere in pristine seas anymore without seeing evidence of plastic. Now, that's a great example when you think about like plastic waste and where that's come from and the story of that sort of plastic. Actually finding ways of holding people in that whole chain of pollution accountable is critical. And again, one of the things that I don't see is people sort of thinking about that in kind of totality and saying, well, you know, Coca-Cola shouldn't be producing so much plastic.
Yeah.
The UK shouldn't be sending its plastic waste, its recycling, to Malaysia. The Malaysian people shouldn't be then burning that plastic or dumping it in, you know, so what is that story that kind of needs to be created? Because I think so much of what is going on from a climate point of view is not seen and not know. Like you the point you make is a really good one. You turn up in a country during COVID and there's no other tourists around, so there's no point in clearing the crowd. You can absolutely see the impact of this. And that's what we want people to understand the impact of the choices that we all make in day-to-day life.
But actually, if you could make it more relevant to you as an individual or to others you're looking to change behavior of, you know, it's the painkiller and the vitamin, you know, it becomes that thing. Like for me, like I absolutely hate paper straws. I think it was the biggest marketing, like let's put something that degrades when it hits liquid as the primary source replacement to what was the perfect plastic straw. And obviously the answer to that is potentially to make a metal straw because metal's recyclable, right?
Yeah.
Or to explain, you know, but then the problem with that is I imagine a metal straw costs a lot more than a paper straw compared to a plastic straw. Companies need to like be honest with themselves and be like, look, you're going to save us money if we don't wash half as many towels. And actually, in return for that, we stayed in one hotel actually, and it was awesome because they said, if you don't get, I think it was in Japan, if you don't get housekeeping, we'll give you food credit of this amount of money. Like, we were there for 10 days, so instead of having housekeeping every day, we had it every other day, and then we had 5 meals for free.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I mean, you were traveling with your children as well, so I can, you know, that was a big thing. Like going back to my Lithuanian experience, you had to put something on your door saying "clean my room," like otherwise they wouldn't clean your room. And I was there for 3 days, and I didn't get because I didn't need my room clean because I don't change my bed sheets every 2 days in the UK, and you know, there was me just coming in and out on, you know, a few minutes every day almost. And I was like, well, that is really good because that's a brilliant way of kind of changing behaviour.
Yes, and you're not made to feel bad.
And you're not made to feel bad. No, exactly. And, you know, I could have put the sign up every day and got my room cleaned if I was so wished. Yeah. But it was... I imagine it, but if you imagine like at the end of that stay, they just went, "Oh, we've just took $30 off your bill." Because do you know what I mean? Like it would just finish it off. It would be so good, so good.
I think it was Austria. Now I'm thinking about it. I think it was in Salzburg that this happened, where we then didn't get it cleaned, and we got this credit for not having the housekeeping. But I think again, it's more of that. There's a guy we should find him actually. There's a guy in the UK that has basically created circuit boards for I think training AI, but I think just general compute that are dipped in this liquid, like a goo, and therefore, but they still operate. So they heat the goo, and they're powering a community swimming pool with the heat.
Wow.
But it's somewhere in the UK. So but I reckon we can probably find them and kind of understand how it all works and stuff. Because I think it's stuff like that. If you knew, like, there's so many things when you think about your daily life that is just been engineered. Like, I didn't realize. I feel like we're going to go in lots of tangents in this podcast. I didn't realize that lithium batteries, like, it's not the best way to create a battery. It's just what came along and was right. It was better than and they just like, oh, that worked.
Yeah.
And they were like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, but it's only like 10% efficient. Yeah, it's fine. It's better than zero. It's better than a horse. So let's just pick this as an option. And now obviously we're discovering like there's different ways of doing better batteries and getting better energy storage. And I think this is the case with everything. I think you look at a lot of stuff and you say, why is it if you have, a car, and obviously we have like regenerative braking now, but that took so long, and that only really came along because of electric cars, because there was a battery in the car to recharge.
I know. Look, I think there's literally millions of choices which have been made, which are actually bad choices, but it was the sort of least bad option at that time.
Yeah,
but it'd be interesting to kind of to kind of understand more of those things. I'd love to find out more about people who are doing really interesting things in a kind of circularity way. I mean, I think it'd be great to kind of chat to people around that, because there are a lot of people sort of thinking about these things.
And I do think that it doesn't have to be so like you have to live off the grid, you have to only eat apples. Like, I think you can still have the conveniences and, luxury of modern day living. It's just about like balancing out, if you're going to have to drive your kids to school every day, maybe you and your three neighbors, maybe you go and ask your neighbors if anyone else goes to their school. Yeah. So then instead of there being 4 cars, there's 1 car. You know? And it's all, and again, it's not, and the framing of that shouldn't be, well, we get to save fuel. It's, we all have to do an hour's round trip to school every day. What if you only have to do 1 out of 4? Like that should be the sales pitch.
Definitely.
And I think that is a lot of the mismarketing of this subject and this topic that can be quite, I think we can solve climate change, Dave. I think we can, and we will. And we will. So look, I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm really looking forward to finding some people who can kind of help us make it more understandable. I'm fascinated by the subject of climate change, fascinated by AI, I'm fascinated by the intersection. I think there's so much to be done around it all. So I'm really looking forward to unpacking that all. Cool. Okay, well, this was just a quick intro episode. We'll kick off properly next week. And the plan, I guess, we'll interview some people, we'll speak to some people, we'll probably look at some cool, interesting AI stuff. And also in the next few months, we have quite a lot of events coming up around the world that we're attending that will probably take you on a journey through as we attend, and hopefully present this stuff in a bit more of a understandable, and not even understandable, a bit more of a relatable fashion, so that people can make up their own minds, because that at the end of the day is what it comes down to.
Definitely. No, I think that's it. It's all about relatability, isn't it?
Cool. Well, until next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.